Over 60? Discover the amazing ginger hack that transformed sleep for thousands in just 2 nights. Martha's nights dragged on as if they held her hostage. Restless, she scrolled through endless remedies for insomnia, her heart heavy with every suggestion that promised a miracle but delivered none. Images of rocking chairs, cozy blankets, and serene images of restful sleep flashed by, promising tranquility she had long forgotten. The reality was a stark contrast, illuminated by the vibrant laughter echoing from her neighbors' homes, a reminder of the life bustling around her while she felt like a mere spectator. The ache of her solitude gnawed at her heart. She worried she might be a burden to her family. Just last week, during a spirited outing with her grandchildren, she had felt the weight of her aging body slowing her down. Their cheerful laughter filled the air, yet all she felt was the hollow echo of her fading presence, the warmth of their joy but a distant memory. Then, late one fateful night, a video caught her eye. The influencer's bright smile and energetic pitch about ginger sparked a flicker of skepticism within her. Could something so simple really transform her restless nights? Desperation clawed at her. She had nothing left to lose. That very night, she made a ginger tea, infusing her evening routine with this newfound hope. Incredibly, 2 nights later, a miracle unfolded. She found herself drifting off to sleep, the feeling of energy surging through her like electricity. The corners of her mind, previously shadowed by fatigue, widened with clarity and light. The days that followed brought a comfort she had long craved, a warmth that pushed through her loneliness, encouraging her to reach out to her family, especially to James, her son, whose silence had cast a shadow over her heart. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Martha's excitement bubbled over as she prepared a ginger-spiced dinner, confident it would create a bridge back to a connection she sorely missed. The kitchen felt alive with aromas, yet anticipation blended with dread, tightening her chest as she imagined their reunion. When James arrived, heavy laden with his burdens, the moment felt charged with unspoken words. Hopes and fears collided in the air around them. Instead of gratitude, James burst forth, confronting her about feeling trapped by her expectations, questioning her grasp on reality. The table lay laden with hope, yet tension simmered, boiling over into a confrontation. The love she had poured into him for years turned to resentment before her eyes as the air turned cold. Her heart ached with the weight of their unsaid words, and she felt the years of sacrifice splintered beneath the strain of clashing desires. As James's final words echoed in her mind, a haunting question resonated. Who bore the true burden in their family? The kitchen, once a haven filled with laughter and love, stood transformed into a battleground of feelings, unresolved conflicts bitterly intertwining. Martha stood there, shaking, with a sense of urgency gripping her. She needed to reclaim her voice without pushing her child away. The stakes climbed higher, and uncertainty loomed large as she braced for what lay ahead, the pain of their rift heavier than she ever imagined. As the echoes of James's confrontation faded into the silence of the kitchen, Martha felt the weight of her indecision pressing down, suffocating her. She caught her breath, the air heavy with spices and unspoken truths. The ginger she had once seen as a simple remedy for her sleep had ignited something much deeper within her, an awakening of awareness about her own needs and the boundaries she had blurred in her attempt to be the perfect mother. For years, she had poured herself into her family, often neglecting her own desires. The confrontation had cracked open a realization that her son's discontent stemmed from her relentless pursuit of his happiness at the cost of her well-being. Feeling raw yet resolute, Martha knew she had to confront her own expectations as fiercely as James had done. She stepped outside into the evening air, seeking solitude and clarity. The setting sun painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within her. Each breath of cool air filled her with resolve. No longer would she be a passive participant in her own life. She would reclaim her agency. Inside her head, a plan began to form. Martha walked to her small garden, breathing in the earthy scent of the soil, where she had spent countless hours planting and nurturing. Gardening had always been her escape, a place to find solace amidst chaos. Slowly, she began to understand that embracing this practice more fully could provide her not only peace, but a sense of purpose beyond her role as a mother. Over the next few days, she poured her energy into her plants, nurturing each seedling with care, just as she had once nurtured James. As she dug her hands into the soil, the rhythmic action soothed her troubled mind. Each day, she made time for herself not just in gardening, but engaging in new activities she had long set aside: painting, reading, and even cooking new recipes. The ginger tea had opened doors she had forgotten existed. However, the shadow of her estrangement from James loomed large. Every time she made a meal, laughter from the children outside echoed in her walls, reminding her that she needed to extend an olive branch. During another evening, emboldened by her newfound vitality, she texted him a simple invitation to join her for a meal. She paced nervously in the kitchen, recounting the myriad of past interactions, hoping this time would be different. As she arranged the table, she visualized the discussion an honest and open dialogue where she could share her insights without pressuring him to conform to her ideals. When James arrived, a trace of apprehension hung in the air, but so did hope. They sat, surrounded by the familiar aromas of comfort food and their shared history. Tentatively, Martha opened the conversation, weaving in her recent revelations. She chose her words with care, determined to express her own struggles while encouraging him to voice his feelings. Yet, as words filtered through their tentative exchanges, she saw the walls she thought they were dismantling begin to fortify around James again. Though he listened, the flicker of understanding she had hoped for remained just out of reach. The battle lines of perception reformed with every moment of silence. As the evening wore on, an unsettling realization struck her. Vulnerability does not always pave the way for reconciliation. Sometimes, it unearths more layers of pain, confusion, and misunderstanding. Just as hope flickered dimly, she felt a surge of determination rise within her. This was not the end. This was merely the beginning of facing the complexities of their relationship. With each conversation, Martha found herself at an intersection of feelings: deep love for her son, an urgency to bridge the gap, and a pursuit of reclaiming her life. The complexities were daunting, but she was no longer afraid to delve deeper. The tools to rebuild were at her fingertips. The next morning, with the dawn breaking anew, Martha was resolved to explore ventures she had long abandoned, seeking out connections not only with James, but also within herself. The task was daunting yet invigorating. She braced for it, knowing that the path forward would reveal truths she had yet to uncover. Little did she know, however, that the journey ahead would not only confront her relationship with James, but lead her to reveal hidden abilities she never thought she possessed, ones that would ultimately change not just her life, but her family dynamic. And as the sun rose higher, she could not help but wonder, was she truly ready for what lay next? The sense of urgency tinged with excitement propelled her forward into the unknown. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust particles swirling in the air. Martha stood by the counter, her hands gripping a mug of steaming ginger tea. Today marked a turning point, another attempt to fortify the rickety bridge between her own desires and the complex relationship with James. She had always believed that change came about through grand gestures, but this time, she sensed it lay in the subtlety of small, consistent efforts. The idea solidified she would not only create space for James, but also carve out a path for herself, one that was distinctive, vibrant, and full of promise. As she sipped her tea, the warmth coursed through her, filling not just her body but her mind. During these moments of solitude, she had begun to discover insights buried beneath layers of self-doubt. Writing had emerged as another form of expression for her thoughts. She had purchased a notebook adorned with a sunflower design, a reminder of her resilience. Today, she would commit her thoughts to paper as a means of processing her next steps. Martha settled into her favorite nook on the couch, the one where sunlight draped her in a golden glow and the ticking clock offered a rhythmic heartbeat to her reflections. She scribbled furiously, her mind racing with realizations about the importance of boundaries both for herself and for James. "Isn't it time to articulate my own expectations?" she wrote, pausing to breathe into her growing apprehension. What if articulating her needs only widened the gap between them? Yet, she recognized that this was part of her growth. Boundaries could serve as a protective embrace rather than a contradiction to love. With every word, Martha felt the burden lightening. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Instead of focusing solely on their fractured connection, why not include James in the journey of self-discovery? What if she shared her newfound interests with him? Perhaps involving him in her gardening escapades or her exploration of painting could offer tantalizing opportunities for bonding. Energized by the thought, Martha envisioned an afternoon spent together in the garden, a place of nurturing and growth, not just for seeds but for their relationship. She felt a spark of excitement, yet with it came a pang of fear. The fear of rejection lingered like a shadow at the edge of her consciousness. Would James be open to reconnecting through these activities? Determined to find out, she set the notebook aside and headed outside. The garden welcomed her with open arms, vibrant greens and budding flowers yawning towards the sky. As she knelt to tend to the soil, her hands submerged in its nurturing embrace, an intuitive voice urged her to take the next step. Later that evening, Martha prepared her message to James carefully. She invited him to the garden for the weekend, clear about her intentions. Rather than emphasizing repair, she framed it as a shared experience, a day of planting and laughter, letting the sun soak in as life flourished around them. The uncertainty of how he might respond gnawed at her. Would he dismiss her invitation? Would he engage? As the days edged closer, anxiety draped itself around her shoulders. She found herself oscillating between optimism and dread, but the decision to reach out stood firm. In the meantime, she also began exploring painting classes at the local community center. The idea of expressing herself through art invigorated her. Each brushstroke became a metaphor for uncovering layers of her identity that had long been hidden. The shift from being confined within the walls of motherhood to stepping into the realm of creative expression electrified her spirit. That weekend loomed on the horizon like a storm cloud. Her heart raced each time she thought of James's response. She felt simultaneously liberated and apprehensive. Her evolution was underway, yet so much still remained unresolved. And as she stood ready to embrace the unknown, Martha understood that this next chapter was going to demand everything: faith, courage, and perhaps a dose of vulnerability. What if, when the moment came, she still felt unprepared? With that nagging question trailing her thoughts, she lost herself in the colors of the paint and the sound of the brush against canvas, trying to quiet the incessant worries as she awaited James's reaction, knowing deep within that the real confrontation was only just beginning. The morning after Martha sent the invitation, she awoke with a heavy heart. The gentle light filtering through her curtains felt too bright, illuminating her turmoil. Could James possibly be the answer to dispelling the shadows of doubt? Or would he be yet another echo of what once was, but no longer could be? With the unanswered question swirling, she grabbed her notebook, seeking solace in the familiar embrace of her thoughts. Having written reams about her relationships, she had never before captured the essence of her desires with such clarity. That morning, however, her pen hesitated as she began, "What do I truly want from this meeting?" As her mind flitted through a spectrum of emotions, the fragile hope that flickered for connection mingled with the dread of being rebuffed. The clarity began to crystallize. She wanted authenticity. She craved a real conversation, unclouded by the past. In the garden later that day, the familiar sense of damp earth and blooming flowers provided a grounding counterpoint to her swirling thoughts. She knelt beside the gnarled roots of an oak tree, its tenacity resonating deeply within her. Would she, too, emerge stronger through the storms she had weathered? She decided then to sculpt the narrative she wanted around James. No more would her life hinge on his actions. She would embrace uncertainty and confront her insecurities head-on. Each day leading to the weekend felt elongated, stretching her patience thin. To fill the gaps, she dedicated more time to her painting. The walls of her studio echoed with the sound of her brush meeting canvas. each stroke an exhalation of emotional buildup, each color a representation of her evolving self. Suddenly, she grasped something poignant. The act of creation was her first step towards self-empowerment and authenticity. She envisioned an art piece themed from the garden she hoped to share with James, a metaphorical blossom of their potential rekindled. Her excitement bubbled as she settled into the colors, yet with every layer she applied, doubt seeped through the cracks. What if he didn't understand her love for art? What if the scars of their past overshadowed the new beginning she envisioned? The apprehension was palpable, but so was the recognition that only by taking risks could she truly flourish. The day before their planned outing arrived, her heart drumming loudly within her chest, a percussion of both fear and anticipation. She completed the artwork, its vibrant hues calling out for acknowledgement, an embodiment of her aspirations. As she leaned back, admiring her work, a realization hit her: this was not just about activity. It was about sharing pieces of herself that had been hidden for so long. This was about expressing the fullness of who she was. With each passing hour and the impending time of their meeting creeping closer, uncertainty clouded her thoughts once again. Would James appreciate her creativity as a reflection of her growth? Or would he see only the remnants of old wounds? As the clock ticked down, Martha found herself torn between the fear of exposure and the exhilarating thrill of possibility. When the designated time finally arrived, she stood at the garden gate, heart racing, breath uneven. The world outside felt alive with anticipation, yet she feared the stillness of an unfriendly reaction. As she waited, she understood that this was not just intersection of two lives. It was a critical moment of truth for herself. How would she communicate the importance of this day, not just to nurture their relationship, but to affirm her own resurrection from the ashes of self-doubt? The faint sound of footsteps approached, and Martha's breath hitched, caught somewhere between hope and anxiety. What potential would tomorrow bring? With that question painting a new layer of urgency in her heart, she could only stand still, entrusting herself to the sun-drenched uncertainty of what awaited her on the other side of the door. The sun dipped slowly beneath the horizon, casting long shadows across the garden. Martha caught sight of James as he approached, hesitating just beyond the gate. The soft creak of wood echoed the tension rising within her. She could see him clearly, yet felt miles apart, consumed by her inner dialogue. Emotion surged within her. Was this the moment she had been preparing for, or simply another opportunity for disappointment? Determined not to let her anxiety overshadow the day, she took a breath, remembered the artwork she had created, and tried to focus on the possibilities instead of the outcome. "Hi, Martha," James said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. His eyes drifted momentarily to the vibrant canvas leaning against an easel nearby. Just that glance opened a window of hope. Perhaps he would see the metaphor she had crafted, the labor of love that reflected both her personal evolution and the tentative potential for a new chapter they could undertake together. "Hey, James," she replied, the sound of her own voice strange and deep, as if it belonged to a different version of herself. She stepped aside, inviting him into the garden. It felt like an unspoken agreement, a setting ripe for honest exchanges, layered with nostalgia yet imbued with a sense of fresh starts. "What is that behind you?" He pointed at her creation, a burst of color against the canvas that mirrored the multicolored blossoms around them. She hesitated, nerves colliding with excitement. It's a representation of growth and transformation, I guess." Her pulse quickened. How vulnerable could she be? Could she share the piece of herself that had been hidden in fear of judgment? "I wanted to express how I've been feeling lately, about us, about life." He stepped closer, inspecting the painting's intricate details, searching for the meaning embedded within the strokes. "It's beautiful," he said, an earnestness radiating from his sincerity. "I can see the passion you put into it." That small affirmation ignited something within her. She found the courage to continue. "I've been dealing with a lot, reflecting on our past, what went wrong, and what I want for the future." Each word felt like shedding a skin she no longer wanted to wear. "I needed to create this as a way to reconnect with myself." A silence hung between them, heavy yet buoyant. She observed him as he processed her words, his brow furrowing slightly, the intensity of the moment palpable. Sharing her truths felt liberating, peeling away layers of hurt and uncertainty. They were standing on a precipice of possibility, and she could either leap or retreat. What do you think? She pressed, unable to veil her vulnerability. Do you think we could find a way forward together? His expression shifted. The complex mix of emotions mirrored her own. I've thought about that too, Martha. It's just complicated. He stepped back, searching her eyes for understanding. Can we really move past everything that happened? The question struck deep, underlying doubts resurfacing. Could she dare to hope? Yet, the honesty of the moment propelled her forward. I believe we can, she said firmly, the words tasting foreign and exhilarating. It's going to take work, but I'm willing if you are. James fell silent, his gaze growing distant. She felt the walls of her heart ache while standing stark in the truth. Would he accept this new Martha, the one who dared to share authentic feelings? As the shadows finally thickened around them, James said, maybe we should talk more about this. The suggestion hung in the air, heavy with implications that Martha's heart raced at his words. Yet, as she opened her mouth to respond, doubt flickered back into her mind, painting the edges of her confidence in gray. What if he was merely being polite? What if their shared past continued to drag them into a web of misunderstanding? In that moment, she understood she could not navigate this alone. Facing her past required not just bravery, but also resilience to withstand the turbulent waters ahead. The opportunity for growth lay not just in this conversation, but within the uncharted territory of trust and honesty, stretching beyond what she had envisioned. The air crackled with unspoken possibilities, and while she ached for assurance, the reality remained. Tomorrow would demand more than just words. It would require action, a recalibration of their shared history. As darkness enveloped the garden, Martha felt the pull toward constructive confrontation. Let's plan to meet again, she said, her voice firm despite the rumble of uncertainty beneath. We have a lot to discuss. I want to know what you really think. It's time we faced everything head-on. With that, she stepped back, allowing the night to weave around their emerging conversation, while within, a determination sparked to confront whatever came next. Would she be able to meet James' truth with her own? The looming sense of potential wrapped around them, inviting them both into the depths of uncharted emotions. As they parted for the evening, Martha's heart pounded, knowing, without a doubt, the real struggle awaited. What truths would surface when they dares to tread into those raw, vulnerable territories? The morning light spilled through Martha's bedroom window, painting soft patterns on her walls. Despite the sun's warmth, a chill lingered in her spine, vestiges of uncertainty from the previous evening. Martha rubbed her temples, reminding herself that today would be different. She had made a decision to confront her past, to explore the fragile bond with James with courage rather than apprehension. She moved through her morning routine with a sense of purpose, each action steeped in intention. Brushing her hair, she noticed the strands cascading down her shoulders like shimmering threads of future hope. Today was not merely another day. It was an opportunity to reclaim herself not just in relation to James, but as an independent individual who had survived silence and complacency. After a quick breakfast, Martha returned to her studio, a space that had become both a sanctuary and a battleground. She examined the painting she had shared with James, feeling both proud and vulnerable. With every brushstroke, she had poured out the essence of her struggles and aspirations. This time, she would take that same fierce spirit into their upcoming conversation. What would she tell him? The mixture of apprehension and eagerness clashed within, urging her to hone the words that could bridge their past to the potential of their future. She didn't merely want to make her case. She sought to understand his character deeply, to learn the motivations behind his hesitation. As Martha stood in front of the canvas, she felt a swirl of colors swirling inside her mind. She grabbed a fresh canvas not just to paint, but to articulate her feelings in a way James might comprehend. It would be her visual guide as she expressed where she stood and where she desired to go. With each stroke, she reflected on the lessons learned from their fragmented history. She wanted to evoke the raw honesty she had felt in their last encounter. But this time, she would let the art speak. The colors clashed and blended, just like the conflicting emotions swirling between them. The act of creating became a meditation, a necessary distillation of courage that would ultimately serve as a catalyst for her own transformation. Hours slipped by unnoticed until the sun arched overhead, signaling it was time to prepare for their meeting. Martha dressed with care, choosing a blouse that reminded her of strength. The mirror reflected the woman she wanted to embody, a person ready to face both confrontation and collaboration. Would James see her strength through her vulnerability? Arriving at their chosen cafe, the familiar atmosphere enveloped her, tinged with nostalgia, yet pulsing with fresh possibilities. Martha took a deep breath and scanned the room. Her heart raced when she spotted James at their table, an equally tentative expression etched into his features. Their eyes met, and suddenly, the unease struck a balance, an unspoken acknowledgement of the complexity they both carried. "Hi," she began, feeling the weight of the moment swell between them. "I've been thinking a lot about what we discussed. I'm ready to dive deeper into everything." His eyes softened, but there remained a flicker of vulnerability. "Me too," he replied. "It's just fear makes it harder, doesn't it?" As they settled into the rhythm of dialogue, each moment unfolded like a delicate brushstroke, revealing layers of emotion previously masked. The conversation meandered through confessions and dreams, every shared vulnerability drawing them closer to a clearer understanding of their past. Martha could taste the bittersweet flavor of revealing truths. Despite the rationality of her thoughts, the emotional tapestry of their history tugged at her heartstrings, igniting raw questioning. Would they truly lay everything bare today? Would confronting their demons lead to liberation or further entanglement? With every word exchanged, the tension fluctuated, the stakes elevated. Each moment was ripe with potential, though the specters of their past hovered nearby, relentless and demanding. What would emerge, the potential for healing or the risk of reopening old wounds? As they probed deeper into the terrain of their affections and fears, Martha felt herself torn between the hope of connection and the dread of unraveling. Would they cautiously dismantle the barriers they had erected, or would they find themselves in an inescapable maze of misunderstandings? With every question turned, a quiet resilience grew within her, a promise to never lose sight of herself, even in the chaos of rediscovery. The truth awaited them, shrouded in uncertainty but shimmering with opportunity. As the afternoon sun streamed through the cafe windows, illuminating their conversation, Martha's resolve solidified. There was no turning back now. They were venturing into the unknown, and she was determined to navigate it, step by step. But as James leaned closer, the tension thickened in the air. What revelation would his next words bring? What choice would they face as they peeled away layers of their shared history? Martha's heart raced as James leaned in, the magnetic pull of their eyes drawing her deeper into the moment. She could sense the weight of unspoken truths lingering just beneath the surface, causing an electric current of anticipation to zip through her veins. Would he open up at last? Would the conversation lead to the clarity she longed for, or would it deepen the divide that had long haunted them? "Why do you think we drifted apart?" Martha asked, her voice steady despite the whirlpool of emotions behind it. She watched James, searching for answers reflected in his gaze, hoping to unearth the roots of their disconnection. James hesitated, and for a moment, the space between them felt suffocating. "I guess I was scared of us, of what it meant," he admitted, his eyes flickering with vulnerability. "I kept waiting for the right moment to talk, to be honest, but I never found it." There it was, the key to their entangled past, resting in the admission of fear. Martha's chest tightened as she nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth of his words. "I felt the same. Maybe we were both too afraid to be vulnerable?" His silence confirmed her suspicion, and a poignant ache settled in her heart. The weight of what could have been and perhaps still could be hung heavy in the air. "We need to break this cycle," she urged, her voice carrying an edge of determination. "It's time to be honest. Not just about the past, but what we want moving forward." James's intense gaze met hers, and she took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of the moment. "What are your fears?" she pressed, desperate to peel back the layers. "To lose you again," he said, vulnerability casting shadows across his face. "And to admit that I might not deserve you." That revelation sent a sharp pang through Martha's chest. How had she never realized how deeply doubt had woven itself into their tapestry? "I wish you could see yourself the way I see you," she whispered, her tenderness spilling forth like a river breaking free from a dam. You deserve happiness, James. We both do. The conversation shifted, shifting from blame to a quest for understanding. With each exchange, the void that had long existed shrank as honesty began to knit their stories together once again. However, there were still lingering questions in her mind, specters of their past that could not be dismissed so easily. What if we can't figure it out? What if opening this door leads to more pain? James asked, his brow furrowed with concern. She paused, weighing his words. Facing discomfort was legitimate. The fear of pain was real. But she also recognized that avoiding deeper connections would lead to a dull existence. Maybe we don't have to be perfect. We just need to be willing to try. I don't want to keep dancing around what we mean to each other. James's expression softened as he absorbed her words, weighing both their hopes and fears. Can we really do that? Open ourselves up fully? She nodded, desperation mingling with hope. This was their chance to carve out new paths, to establish a foundation of honesty laden with the intricacies of both joy and sorrow. Yes, it's terrifying, but it's also liberating. Just as Martha thought they had reached a pivotal moment, James paused, a troubled look surfacing again. What if in doing this, we find that it's too late? What if we open ourselves up only to realize we've changed too much? His words hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament, beautiful yet perilous. Was she truly ready for that reality? The thought sent shivers down her spine, but she knew that to retreat now would mean surrendering to past pain without a fight. Maybe we won't know until we try, she whispered, digging deep to find her voice unclouded by past fears. I'd rather face the unknown with you than be stuck in this limbo. Martha held her breath, hoping her earnestness would break through the turmoil she sensed in him. Each heartbeat pulsed with the promise of revelation, and with each passing second, the stakes rose higher. What choice would he make as they navigated this treacherous terrain? In that moment, she realized it wasn't only about them. It was about her, too, her willingness to embrace the risk of vulnerability, to stake her longing for a deeper connection against the possibility of heartbreak. Could she truly handle the potential fallout? As he opened his mouth to speak, the tension in the air escalated to a breaking point. Would they find a way to bridge the expanse between them, or would their moment of reckoning shatter their fragile bond forever? Martha's heart pounded as she awaited James's response, the silence stretching between them like a taut wire, ready to snap. Could this moment redefine who they were, or would it reveal irreparable chasms? Maybe it is too late, he finally murmured, each word laced with an unsettling heaviness. The uncertainty in his voice cut deeper than any previous argument they had. She felt an overwhelming urge to reassure him, to tell him that timing was irrelevant if their intentions were genuine. But before she could gather her thoughts, he continued, what if there is someone better for each of us out there? The suggestion felt like a punch to her gut. You don't really believe that, she asserted, surprised by the strength of her voice. It was as if his doubts were infecting her with echoes of their past and old, familiar fear that threatened to unravel the hope she had mustered. We're in this moment, James, not some hypothetical future. She recognized the truth in his words, the subtle admission that his fear of inadequacy was pushing him away. But that was the very thing she wanted to dismantle. Vulnerability was both frightening and beautiful, a bridge to deeper understanding. How do we move forward? James asked, his brow furrowed, his vulnerability a mirror of her own turmoil. Martha took a deep breath, grounding herself in this moment. We start with honesty, our truths, our fears, even the things that feel impossible to say. We have to be willing to confront the shadows or risk being consumed by them. The conviction in her words ignited a feeling of resolve within her, a desire to forge a new path and not just linger in the shadows of past mistakes. She pondered the strength she'd garnered in the last few months, having faced various challenges at work, from navigating fierce competition in a high-stakes project to asserting her voice in meetings filled with more assertive colleagues. Taking a leap toward authenticity with James felt no less daunting, yet equally necessary. What if we find ourselves broken instead of whole? He questioned, frustration edging into his tone. Mending a broken connection is still better than leaving it to splinter completely, she replied, surprised by how clear and articulate her thoughts had become. It's about what we learn in the process. If we don't try, we're choosing a slow burn of regret. James remained silent for a moment, His eyes locked onto hers, searching for a flicker of understanding, a spark of possibility in the depths of uncertainty. Martha could only wish he could see the strength. She had found a newfound belief in her ability to navigate complicated terrains. Then, a wave of realization crashed over her. It wasn't solely about their relationship. This was an opportunity to deepen her sense of self. By stepping into this conversation with vigilant honesty, she could finally embrace her fears and thus validate her own voice. Let us commit to exploring this, to digging deep into our emotions and our aspirations, she urged, her resolve hardening. Let us discover the depths of our fears together while managing the weight of uncertainty. Her words hung in the air between them, a testament to her willingness to embrace vulnerability as an avenue for growth. A single tear slipped from James's eye as he nodded slowly, the turmoil within him slowly shifting. But just as a tentative smile began to break through his concerned expression, a loud crash echoed from a nearby hallway, jolting them from their introspection. The moment had been both fragile and profound, and now, an unforeseen interruption threatened to overshadow their breakthrough. What was that? James asked, a hint of concern creeping into his voice as he turned. I don't know, Martha replied, a sense of urgency washing over her. The unknown loomed larger than their previous uncertainties, brushing aside the connection they had cautiously begun to build. The stakes were raised again as she contemplated the direction this newfound tension was about to take them. But as they approached the sound, Martha couldn't help but wonder if she and James were on the brink of confronting something much bigger than their own vulnerabilities, something that could either strengthen their bond or threaten to unravel everything they had just started. What dark truth awaited beyond that door? Martha hesitated, her body taut, every muscle screaming to retreat from whatever lay beyond that door. The crash had reverberated through the walls, a harsh contrast to the soft, vulnerable moment they had just carved out. She could feel the tension coiling in James beside her, mirroring her own uncertainty, but adding a layer of protective instinct. Let us just see, she said, her voice steady despite the anxious flutter in her chest. Taking a breath to steady her resolve, Martha opened the door, the hinges creaking ominously as they stepped into the dimly lit hallway. The scene before them was disorienting. Several office supplies lay scattered across the floor, papers, a broken chair, and a single flickering fluorescent light above. Something deep within Martha triggered a sense of empathy for the chaos. This disarray, an echo of their own relationship, served as a stark reminder of how easily things could fall apart. Are you all right? James called into the corridor, his eyes scanning for any sign of a person. Martha felt the weight of their earlier conversation press heavily on her. What if this is a sign? She mused, needing to voice her thoughts. What if the turmoil we're witnessing reflects everything we've been avoiding? James turned to her, a flicker of understanding igniting in his eyes. You think this is about us? Maybe, she replied, taking a step forward. Maybe it's a reminder that chaos can be revealing. We've been teetering on the brink. It's time to confront the source, whatever it may be. They edged closer to the source of the disturbance, their hearts pounding not just from fear, but from an invigorating rush of clarity. The earlier dialogue now seemed less daunting, a prelude to a much larger confrontation. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a fellow colleague, breathing heavily, face flushed. I'm so sorry. I knocked the chair over trying to juggle everything, he stammered, eyes darting between them. Martha immediately recognized the sculpting pressure of workplace expectations reflected in his demeanor, a pulse of anxiety she often bore herself. No problem, Martha replied, her voice softening as she approached him. Maybe we all feel a bit like things are out of control. James stepped forward, supporting Martha's attempt to diffuse the tension. We've all been there. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. He shared a compassionate glance with their colleague, who visibly relaxed. The three of them lingered in the hallway, sharing stories of their own pressures and expectations. With each interaction, Martha felt herself expanding not just emotionally, but in her understanding of shared struggles. Every revelation pulled her deeper into the realization that vulnerability was not a weakness. It was a source of strength. As the conversation progressed, Martha felt her earlier fears about James and their relationship begin to fade. While she had initially viewed their personal turmoil as a boundary, now it felt like an opportunity for connection both with James and with their colleague. It was a delicate balancing act, but she found herself fully embracing the responsibility of growth that came with these revelations. Just then, the fluorescent light flickered again, then died, plunging the hallway into a soft darkness, leaving them with only faint echoes of their shared admission. In the quiet, Martha's mind raced. It was a reminder of the shadows she had mentioned to James. The weight of uncertainty hadn't vanished. Instead, it only intensified. What are we going to do next? She wondered aloud, looking at James, knowing this wasn't just about confronting the chaos, but redirecting its energy into their relationship. This was no longer simply about fixing what was broken, it was about cultivating something stronger. Maybe the question is how we can turn this chaos into growth together, James suggested, the determination in his voice stirring something new within her. In that moment, Martha could feel an awakening inside her, a commitment forming not just to their relationship, but to her emerging capabilities. Suddenly, her sense of self began to shine brighter than ever as she realized that every challenge was an invitation to deepen their connection. Except as they stepped carefully over the scattered items on the floor, a second crash echoed from further down the hallway, pulling them back into a shared anxiety. "What now?" James muttered, concern etched across his face. Martha looked at him again, heartbeat racing. "We face it," she said firmly. Together. As they moved forward, an exhilarating sense of purpose washed over her. This was no longer just about navigating their own complexities. It was about harnessing every challenge as an opportunity to craft a deeper, richer relationship than they had ever experienced before. What lay ahead, however, remained shrouded in mystery. Martha stood before the window, watching the sun rise with a renewed sense of hope. The warmth of the light filled her with an energy she hadn't felt in ages. The tumultuous events of the previous days had cleared a path for clarity, and now she stood ready to embrace her personal revolution. Her confrontation with the chaos both in the office and in her relationships had galvanized a profound realization. Vulnerability was indeed an ally. Gone were the days of rigid expectations that dampened her ability to connect genuinely with James. She had stepped into her power by accepting her own humanity, allowing herself to express her fears and aspirations openly. That afternoon, as she prepared to meet James once more, Martha felt a surge of confidence. She had discovered her voice, a voice yearning to articulate new boundaries and a vision for their relationship that was less about obligation and more about mutual growth. The ginger tea, once just a sleep aid, had unknowingly served as a catalyst for this transformation, igniting her awareness of the vitality that came with nurturing both herself and her relationships. When James arrived, his demeanor had lost some of the anxiety that previously clouded his presence. They settled into her cozy kitchen, an informal space elevated from mere utility to a sanctum of shared history and hope. The familiar aromas of intentional meals filled the air, echoing the warmth of love and understanding that Martha was beginning to cultivate again. "Thanks for inviting me back," James said, his eyes softening as he took in the transformation of the space, and perhaps the transformation of Martha herself. "Today is different," she replied, her voice imbued with determination. "I want to share where I stand and explore where you do too. Let us navigate this carefully together." The conversation flowed as they dissected the layers of their recent experiences. With each word exchanged, barriers that had once seemed insurmountable began to chip away. She talked about her desires, her needs, and the importance of confronting their fears head-on. She also listened intently as James voiced his insecurities, the imperfections that had kept him at a distance. Their dialogue shifted from self-doubt toward empowerment, an acknowledgement that their connection was not tied solely to the past, but continued to evolve in the present. Martha could feel the room crackling with energy. What had once been fraught with tension transformed into fertile ground for pruning old wounds and sowing the seeds of mutual understanding. "I'm afraid too," James admitted, his vulnerability disarming. "But maybe we can find a way to show up for each other without losing ourselves." The validation felt invigorating. They had both achieved something monumental, not just surviving their emotional upheaval, but actively confronting it and evolving together. As the days turned into weeks, Martha dedicated more time to her growing passions: gardening, painting, and nurturing herself. Each activity became a testament to her commitment to personal fulfillment, a reminder that she could thrive beyond just her role as a mother. Confidence blossomed within her, reflected in the vigor by which she embraced both her dreams and challenges. James, inspired by her transformation, began to pursue his interests too. They ventured into shared experiences, revisiting old hiking trails, rediscovering forgotten laughter amidst the backdrop of nature. Each outing solidified a renewed bond, stitching the frayed fabric of their relationship with shared memories instead of burdens. Martha's growth did not merely elevate her individual aspirations. It paved the way for new opportunities within her professional realm. She confidently initiated discussions at work, positioning herself as a leader ready to embrace challenges and foster collaboration among her colleagues. As her influence grew, so did her respect among peers, validating the journey of reclaiming her voice. Ultimately, Martha's quest for self-acceptance opened the door to a future filled with hope, connection, and boundless potential for both herself and James. They had not only survived their tumultuous past, but had embarked on a vibrant new chapter, one built on understanding, authenticity, and a commitment to growing together. And as Martha gazed upon her flourishing garden, she recognized that just as plants need sunlight and water to thrive, so did their relationship. This was still a work in progress, requiring care and intention. Yet for the first time in years, she truly believed in the beauty of the journey ahead. Her heart swelled with pride and joy, knowing she had conquered what she once thought impossible. She had achieved authenticity, rebuilt her connection with her son, and discovered a life filled with purpose beyond parental expectations. The doorway to her future was wide open, and she stepped through it fearlessly. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for more empowering stories like Martha's. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Don't wait even one more second. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible transformation. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this powerful conclusion.